report. It was just a misplaced modifier. But I mean, oh, the Just Serve program, the lady came.
Good evening.
To the Board of Director meetings at Space Coastal Florida City.
If you're going to speak tonight, if you would take a moment and fill out a speaker's card, please. They're in the back lobby area as you come in.
The Mormon Church of the Latter-day Saints. And it's like a computer.
And they may not show up. No. Somebody insisted it be there. I think it was Patsy.
I think they disappeared.
We got a new breed of fish bottle, see it? I see it, but I always bring mine home. I have one.
Anything else?
Best to leave your microphone off as long as possible because I noticed during my test it really picked up the typing.
April 17th to order, please. Ms. Raymond, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry to say, Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Rocky.
Yeah. Well, you worked with her for what, 8 years or 10 years? Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Would we call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Here?
Mayor Hogue,
Here.
Councilmember Morrison,
Here.
Councilmember Randalls,
Present.
Councilmember Raymond.
Here.
Okay, we have a couple public participation cards. The first one is Peggy Green. Good evening.
I live at 219 Long Point Road in Cape Canaveral, which until recently was a very nice place to live, and now we flood because of all the overbuilding. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight. As a longtime resident of Cape Canaveral, and so that I would not stray from my thoughts, I typed it out. I know that growth is inevitable in every city. There is growth that benefits and there is growth that does not. I believe we are seeing in this city the latter. I am much opposed to bigger and bigger hotels on smaller and smaller pieces of land. I have experienced, and my family has experienced firsthand, growth that ruined a beautiful wetlands and a berm with large oaks and other trees, leather ferns, palmettos, and flora that is native to Florida. We watched as it was bulldozed down, hauled away in trucks, and filled in without regard to wildlife that can no longer exist there. Now we have an occasional raccoon, and in the spring, an occasional cardinal or two. I'm even more dismayed of all the proposed big buildings after talking to a developer who looked me in the eyes, and this is what he said to me. I am building on the land that I have been purchasing since the 1980s. I intend to build my hotels and my 3-story parking garage, and there is nothing you or anyone else can do. Furthermore, I know that Cape Canaveral will be underwater by 2050, and as soon as I get all my building done, I am selling everything and moving out of the area. Now, I ask you, does that man have the best interest of this city at heart? Or are we just the means of making him even more richer? And when a member of the city council said to me with glee in his eyes and glee in his voice, saying, "We had a man from Israel come with 2 suitcases full of money who wants to build big buildings here in Cape Canaveral, and we're going to let him." I ask you, does anybody have the interest of this city at heart? I know one who does. God loves this land. It's His creation. He created a beautiful piece of land between the ocean and the clear flowing Banana River at one time. And I know He loves this land because He puts something of Himself in everything He creates. Land is important to Him because it speaks of Him and it reflects His character. There are 1,717 verses in His Word that we call the Bible about land and the stewardship of that land and the people that He places upon that land to steward that land, to live, to work, to enjoy His creation. We, as a people in this city, will be held accountable for the stewardship of this piece of land called Cape Canaveral. And I am afraid that we have failed in that responsibility. The beach has practically disappeared.
Ms. Green, you're going to have to you're going to have to wrap it up. You're already.
I'm wrapping it up.
You're over.
The river is polluted to the point that no fish or shrimp are found, and if it were, you couldn't eat it. We have failed the wetlands to the point that most of them have been destroyed. Overbuilding has caused flooding in areas that never flooded before. I would say we have not been good stewards of this land.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Henry.
For the record, David Henry from Melbourne, Florida, previously Patrick Air Force Base. My father is over at the Cape. I'm here because I wanted to present the proclamation that the Brevard County School Board had passed for all 4,000 classrooms, commemorating April, which is nationally recognized as Child Abuse Awareness Month, to shine light on a bigger issue. The proclamation is called a Parental Alienation Awareness Month for the month of April. Several other cities here in Brevard County have passed it, and I just wanted to read the language on the record. Whereas alienating behaviors often found in high conflict divorce and custody situations can cause mental and emotional anguish to children, depriving them of their right to love and be loved by both parents. Whereas parental alienation takes advantage of the suggestibility and dependency of children and deprives them of their right to love and be loved by both parents. Whereas parental alienation is considered harmful to children, robbing them of their sense of security and can affect them into adulthood with tragic consequences. whereas childhood establishes the integral, fundamental understanding, concept, and importance of gender, religious, economic, and racial equality, and whereas Parental Alienation Awareness Month is intended to increase knowledge and understanding of the problem to help parents, caregivers, and social service providers stop the abuse of innocent children caught in the crossfire of the people that they love. That was just what I wanted to present to your council this week.
Yes, sir, we had prepared one for you, but it wasn't on the agenda for a presentation, so if you would like to take it with you, we'll give it to you, or you can come pick it back up.
For this occasion, I just wanted to alert the public and give more spotlight on the issue, that's all.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
But we have it for you here. David?
Thank you.
It wasn't on our agenda, but they made one for you, so it was something we didn't realize. Thank you. Joe Abreu?
Good evening. Thank you. Joe Abreu, 225 Long Point Road. My concern was the meeting minutes from last meeting, that some of the things that got said are not in the meeting minutes, and therefore would like to see it put in. And that was my request, to be notified in writing by mail of any and all things that are going to change at the end of Long Point Road. And I believe it was Mayor Hogue said that I would be notified, and it's not reflected in the meeting minutes.
Good.
The other, one quick one, Mr. Hogue, is it states in here that you said we are trying to meet state requirements. What are the state requirements for that area?
Pepper trees for number one item. But Joe, I'm not here to debate it.
No,
tonight,
I don't
but
want to debate.
We'll get the minutes corrected to match what you want, and
Okay, and then,
I will discuss it with you. I'll come and talk with you, but we're not here to discuss.
that would be great.
Participation.
That would be
We can't do
great.
it.
But
Okay.
we would also like, and it's not just me, it's other residents
I
on the
understand.
road,
I understand.
would like to have a say in what's going on down there.
Okay.
It's a one-way road.
I understand,
It's
Joe. but
two-lane.
You're eating up your 3 minutes, so I'll come and see you.
Well, it says I got a minute 53.
Oh, we got it corrected. If that's what your thing is, the minutes, and then if you want to talk about Long Point, I'll come down and talk to you. No problem. Okay, that completes our cards, other than we have one for an ordinance. So we'll continue on. We go on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 1, please, for discussion.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll go ahead and pass the consent agenda, other than item number 1, which consists of 2 items. We have a motion for passing the consent agenda on the bid for replacement of force main.
I'm sorry, Mayor, you're looking for approval of item number 2?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
the
Mayor,
rest of the
I would
consent
move
agenda.
for approval of item number 2 on the consent agenda.
I second it.
Okay, item number 1. Call the roll, please, for the...
Mayor Pro Tem Hogue? Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
4.
Mayor Hogue?
4.
Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond?
4.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just want to make a motion to add in, to ensure that it's done, what our citizen Joe had just asked for, to add into the minutes that it was stated he would receive some sort of mail. I'm not sure what the exact specifics were. And then also add in the language that you described that you're going to speak to him about in regards to the state mandates.
Council?
Would that be a correction of the minutes, or would that add on tonight's agenda, or what?
In addition to the minutes.
Okay.
He's asking for something that was said off of the record, I guess, but that's not minutes, other than the fact that he would, well, I guess he wants to talk to me, which I'll volunteer to go and talk to him. I don't have a problem with that. But what I told him later on was after the meeting, I believe, I told him that if he wants to be notified, I'll make sure he gets a special notice. There's no problem with that. But that's not in the minutes. It wasn't discussed here on the dais.
Okay.
So we can't add that into the minutes, I would not think.
I asked for that while I was still standing at the vote, and it was acknowledged by someone in the council, I believe it was there.
I remember telling you out there on the walkway that I don't remember hearing the minutes. But I don't know. I don't have privy to the minutes verbatim.
If I may muddy the waters, and everyone bear with me because I'm trying to be transparent here. One, it would occur to me that it would seem that we could go ahead and adopt the minutes of the last meeting, and that we can make very certain that he clarified and include that in this minutes as under public participation, that he requested, and in this instance, Mayor Hogue made the commitment that he would be notified. And additionally, Mayor Hogue indicated that he would meet with the gentleman in the future. Would that be okay for others? Then we can kind of put the one set of minutes to rest without controversy, because we've agreed how we're going to treat these minutes very specifically to make sure it's clear in them of what he presented under public participation and what was said by you on behalf of the city. That's just a suggestion, and we can make doubly, triply sure that that's in the next set of minutes.
Okay.
Because the important thing, Joe, as I understand, is you want to be notified, and he said he would make sure you are. Okay?
I do not have a problem with it going on meetings.
Okay. Yeah. And what we will do, I'll speak on behalf of the city clerk, which I try not to normally do,
That's okay.
is we'll go ahead and send to you over the next several days. Not more than a week from now, we'll send you a copy of the draft language that you would see in the minutes regarding your public participation comments. And I think that makes it very clear, transparent, and helps us all to be sure we're on the same page.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Well, with that being said, I'd just like to make a motion to adopt the minutes as written. Thank you.
Call the roll, please. Second.
Mr. Chair, I would second that motion.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Four.
Mayor Hogue?
Four.
Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond?
4.
Public hearing is ordinance number 02218, and it's the second reading about sergeant at arms. Mr. Garganese.
Mr. Mayor, ordinance number 02-2018, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, providing code amendments related to the Sergeant at Arms, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is second and final reading of this ordinance. There have been no amendments since first reading. It's also a public hearing item. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, should the council have them.
Thank you. Counsel?
Speaking before the audience has heard this, but it's identical to what we passed at the first reading last month. It's, if I may continue, Mr. Mayor, it's
Sure.
simply adding under the Sergeant at Arms, the procedures that we're going to go through when we're going to have training, and quite well drawn out. And so I certainly will speak for it when it's time to make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Mr. Randall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Or any discussion, any more discussion? We'll open it to the public. Anybody have a question on what we're doing here? We had a few changes in the Sergeant at Arms request by Councilmember Morrison, and we're adding it to the ordinance. Just some language about some training. Nobody? We'll close public hearing, bring it back to the dais. Council, we can do a motion and.
With that in mind,
I mean,
Mayor, I
call
would
for it.
move indeed that
Call for the
we,
motion,
Call a question.
call the order. I'm gonna call for the
Okay.
vote if you're through. Just bringing it back to you.
Yeah.
Got anything else?
okay, yeah, nothing else.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
4.
Mayor Hoag?
4.
Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Councilmember Raymond?
For,
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion at second reading.
Okay, we'll move on to the ordinance number 04, 2018, providing for pharmacies and medical marijuana treatment centers. This is the first reading. Mr. Carganese.
Actually, it's, this is the townhouse.
Townhouse.
Ordinance. The next ordinance on the agenda is
Which one
ordinance.
did I skip one?
Yep. You skipped over the townhouse ordinance.
Oh, I'm sorry. 4. Oops.
Okay?
Excuse me.
Yep. Item 4.
Ordinance number 4.
The second public hearing item is ordinance number 03-2018, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending Section 110-372 of the City Code, providing for a 20-foot minimum townhouse unit width, increasing the minimum lot widths, and adjusting the minimum lot areas accordingly, establishing provisions governing non-conforming townhouse structures and lots, providing relief for multiple family and two-family dwellings existing prior to October 4, 1988, which were built in accordance with townhouse standards from certain minimum lot width and setback requirements, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. This ordinance was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board in March. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval of this ordinance. This ordinance addresses the construction and the existence of townhouse units within the city of Cape Canaveral. This ordinance does several things. It modifies several of the lot width dimensional requirements that are currently in the city code. It also establishes a minimum townhouse unit width of 20 feet going forward. In addition, as the council is aware, the city has amended these dimensional requirements before, when the council modified those dimensional requirements back in the 90s, in the 80s. They created certain nonconformities out there in the community regarding existing townhome units. That, of course, has raised questions on whether or not those pre-existing townhouse units that were built under old standards could be reconstructed in the event that they are destroyed. This ordinance clarifies and provides a provision that those townhouse units that were previously constructed under existing code requirements, if destroyed, can be reconstructed, notwithstanding the fact that they're non-conforming to today's standards. So that's an important addition to this particular ordinance. In addition, as the council is aware, because you've had a citizen come up and address this particular issue, out there in the community, there are some multifamily projects that were built to townhome standards previously, back in the 80s. However, for whatever reason, those multifamily units were not individually platted, and townhomes were not created as you would, understand a townhome, individually owned units. They remained multifamily dwellings for many years, several decades, and an issue came up whether or not the current property owner could convert those multifamily units into townhome units today. Well, of course, those units do not comply with the existing dimensional requirements for townhomes today, so technically and legally, they cannot be, under the existing code, converted into townhome units with individually owned units. This ordinance, if it passes, would allow property owners in that situation to convert those multifamily units into townhome units, notwithstanding they don't comply with today's requirements, but they comply with the requirements that were in existence at the time that they were constructed. So this ordinance would allow that conversion to occur. There are several conditions, of course. They would have to have an engineer certified to the building official that the town, those multifamily units were indeed built to townhome standards back then, as a precautionary condition, to make sure that the conversion would be proper under the proposed ordinance. So there's a few moving parts to this particular ordinance. Dave and I spent a lot of time in my office working on this particular ordinance. We'd be happy to answer any technical questions you may have regarding the terms.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask the attorney if I understand this, and I think I do. Basically, throughout the years when the city was freshly owned or freshly built, we had people that built to the current requirements at that time, which may have been a 16 or 17-foot townhome. Then we increased it to 20 feet minimum. That meant those homes are non-conforming and they couldn't be rebuilt. We simply are correcting that. Is that easy?
That's correct. You're providing relief to those property owners in the event that those units are destroyed.
Thank you.
They can be rebuilt, and they wouldn't lose their units.
That's all for me. I understand it.
Wes? Angela?
I have nothing.
Okay. Wes?
Yeah, I got a few comments, thank you. My first one is, when I look at this, I see two separate issues, and just want to first of all thank the staff and the boards for spending time with me on this one. The second one, if I can jump ahead, in regards to the conversion from a multifamily over, I understand that one. Hats off to you, Anthony, for the background and the history, which was very helpful that Dave sent me. And that one makes a lot of sense to me. One of the filters that I try to run everything through are we getting in the way of good, safe development, and or is that development safe or unsafe? And when I look at this, this one doesn't come off to me as anything necessarily unsafe, but I do feel like we're getting in the way from allowing this particular property owner to sell the building and to have ownership. So if I was to pull that one to the side, I would fully support that one. The one that I have trouble with is the first one, and I know that Dave Dickey had said, in the planning and zoning meeting that we could, in fact, possibly separate these two. At the time, P&Z didn't feel like that was necessary. My concern is, if I would fully support the second one, I would have a hard time supporting the minimum townhome width at where I stand today with the knowledge that I have today. And for those reasons, I'm prepared to vote. I wouldn't support it. I'd love to hear what council has to say, especially if some of you who's been around for a while, and to maybe help me understand why that's a good idea to keep it. But if I had to make a request or a motion, I would make a motion to amend the language to take out anything in regards to minimum widths on townhomes and all the supporting language as far as the area. Keep the language that would allow this conversion to happen, and give myself and maybe the council a separate ordinance to pass, and or today convince me otherwise why this is a good idea. So I would vote it down no as a whole, since it's bundled, if I'm making sense, opposed to separating it. So that's my issue with it as it stands.
Okay, I can talk to it because I've been following this for day one.
Thank you.
And I think I propagated the cause of this to be before us many years ago. Back when this project that brought this to our attention was built, Townhomes were a foot to 2 foot narrower. They were down to a minimum of 16 foot at one time. And we have some in here that were built at 16 feet. Condominiums were another issue that kind of fell in this category, but on a bigger scale. So if you owned a home, Wes, and you come in and bought a home that was built to the code, which these homes we're changing over were, at that time it was our code. And as time progressed, people changed things and the code got a little stringent to make your house come non-conforming. So if the way our ordinance reads, if your house got destroyed 50% or more, you couldn't build your home. Now, what would you do? I'm asking you a question.
If I could not rebuild my home?
Right.
Not sure. Is it a rhetorical
Walk away
question?
from it? Would you
No,
walk away?
of course not.
You would go to court, correct?
Yeah, I'd try to
Okay,
get some
so
easements and variances.
We
and
have a
get some
high rise,
exceptions.
let's say, we have a high rise of 200 houses in it, and 50% of them are over non-conforming. We had 50 homeowners that would lose their house, okay, if it was 50% destroyed. So, of course, we're going to be in court with a class action lawsuit. Are we going to win that? No. So why should we even have it in our ordinance? Let's correct the problem that we have, make those houses conforming. They can't make them any bigger, but they can rebuild the footprint. That's what this all kind of says. Now, if you made a statement there that you wouldn't support this, but you'll support part of it. Well, part of it wouldn't even need to be supported because it wouldn't be here if we weren't curing this problem. The townhouses at 16 feet are non-conforming. The ones that are 19 feet are non-conforming under today's code. And we have a lot of those townhouses around here. A lot of the condos, which we corrected, it was the same ordinance basically, but only it applied to condominiums, 4 units or more, buildings of 4 and more. We're talking about duplexes here. We're talking about townhouses that are built maybe in 4 units in a building. And we have one in particular in this one case that was something like 19 feet wide, or it was just a tad under what it should have been. And we're correcting that problem to where that is a legal home. It can be rebuilt, but it's non-conforming from the code. The code today is 20-foot minimum townhouse. And that's what we're doing. We're just correcting a lot of
Yeah, I think that
your problems that will be there. That's going to be financially a burden to the city.
I understand the conforming, non-conforming issues. I guess what I'm wrestling with is we continue to say 20-foot minimum townhomes, and nowhere in the code as it's written today do we have a definition on what a townhome should be as far as minimum, let alone any home. I think the intent was possibly to have a 20-foot minimum townhome, and we defined that by it was 16 foot prior to 1988. After 1988, they went to 20-foot wide lots with an 8-foot setback. On the end units, you actually could get away with a 12-foot wide home. And I think the property on Monroe Street and a few others are an example of that. Because those end units were allowed to have 12-foot wide homes, that and maybe a better ordinance could have been written to accommodate that. That, I believe, brought up some concerns. And what I was really, the big issue for me was, I don't see the safety concerns with having a 12-foot, a 10-foot, or even an 8-foot home. I don't know if we need to be in the business of telling people how wide a home should be. I think that if I could hear some reasons why that's unsafe and maintain setbacks and lot widths, I think we can accomplish a lot of this. Now, this one says, this puts a hard, concrete definition for the first time in the history of Cape Canaveral of how wide a home can be. And that, to me, is where I don't support it. So that's it.
Mr. Mayor, I think David Dickey has some background information and some professional advice and thinking that could apply to this particular situation. As a general comment, governments historically have regulated zoning, and that protects investors, current investors' property values, and much the same thing as a general rule applies to townhomes as well. If we start saying that they could be as narrow as 2 feet or 3 feet or 5 feet or 6 feet, then we end up affecting the density perhaps and a number of other issues. It's not necessarily just about safety, it's about proper and orderly development of a community with reasonable conditions and standards attached. And that's why there's minimum lot size, there's minimum dwelling unit sizes typical, and it has less to do about safety because the codes can make just about anything safe. I think, again, I don't know that I would want to live in a neighborhood where I had a rather large townhome and have Bob Hogue move next door and take the one that's 20 feet and divide it in half and make 2 10s, as an example, or whatever. And I think, Dave, do you want to make some sense out of it or not?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's really, Wes is talking about safety issues, and a lot of safety issues are dealt with our life safety codes, and those would include like our building code and the code our fire department regulates. Those are really what I would call more safety related codes, and all that is in there to maintain safety issues. The zoning side of it, I mean, that's why we have zoning, is to create predictability for property owners. And when I say that is, if someone buys a townhome, historically, they've always assumed it was going to be 16 feet up through 88 or so, and then recently 20 feet wide. And that's what government does. We create setbacks. We create minimums. We have minimums in our code right now. 1 bedrooms have to be, I think it's 800 square feet, and 2 bedrooms 1,000. So we have minimum. Our code is loaded with minimums. But that's really what the issue is that I think that's Wes's main concern, is the 12-foot wide. He feels, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Wes, so jump in here. But Wes is basically saying, hey, government should not get in the business of telling a homeowner or a developer you can build or live in a 12-foot wide unit. Our planning and zoning board has a different feel. We discussed this issue because what happened is we had 5 townhomes built in the 300 block of Monroe, which is directly north of the park. Some of you remember those townhomes that got built here a couple years ago. And because our code doesn't have a minimum width for the unit, and as Wes described, you put the 8-foot setback on a 20-foot lot, you have a 12-foot wide unit. So we have some 12-foot wide units out there. And there were some concerns by the Planning and Zoning Board at the meeting where we discussed the plat. And the concern was 12-foot units may not be appropriate in the city of Cape Canaveral. Mr. Dickey, prepare an ordinance, bring it back to us so we can consider establishing minimum widths for the units, not just the lots. And that's really kind of how we got here tonight, is obviously that ordinance was brought back to the P&Z. They felt like what you have in front of you is appropriate for the city. I mean, they're a lay board of citizens. I don't need to explain to you what the P&Z board is, but they're there to make a lay policy recommendations to the city council. And that's what they've done, and that's what you have in front of you this evening.
Well, additionally, though, I think from staff's point of view and the basic concepts of zoning and land use also suggest that you should tend to group certain size parcels and properties together.
Well, that's
other than the mixed use area or
correct.
Planned unit development, which allows you to intentionally deviate, perhaps to some extent, with trade-offs.
That's why I mentioned when I used the word predictability earlier when I first started speaking. That's important for property owners. They need to have predictability. That's why we have zoning. So if they build a 1,500 square foot home, somebody can't come in and put a 500 square foot home next to them. Mm-hmm. That affects their property value. So that's why when I speak the word predictability, that's what I mean. The citizens or the property owners can rely on
zoning code to maintain those property values. And so the thought was, from the Planning and Zoning Board, and from staff, frankly, that a 12-foot wide townhouse may not be appropriate and may negatively affect or impact the 20-foot wide units we have
And
primarily
related
throughout town.
property values.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And if I can just chime in, I'd actually like to hear from the council. Thank you, Mayor Hoag, for explaining the non-conforming and a little disagreement there. But I'd love to hear from our council on, you've heard the staff's advice on that. You've heard words like it hurts investors. You've heard words like it hurts predictability. Quote, it may not be appropriate. And what are we talking about? The difference between predictability can be accomplished with setbacks, with green space ratios, with so many kitchens, baths, things. And by the time you do that complicated formula, you're only going to end up with a certain size unit. So the example of 2 to 3 foot, while I think our city manager was being facetious, and I welcome that, we need more of that in city council meetings. We're really talking about a 12-foot unit. So I'd like to hear from you, is 12 foot too small? While we have the authority to say whatever we want a width of a building size to be, is that the right thing to do?
Well, who are you looking to answer, me?
Just open it up to you, whoever feels.
Well, I can tell a little bit. I see in the audience Lamar Russell, who I worked with on the Planning and Zoning Board 30 years ago, and he's still on it, incidentally. He's reading the book that he wrote right now, that green one in his hand.
Rocky, he's going to talk, so let Lamar do his own
Okay.
talking. He's going to speak. He's got a card up here.
The reason that we came about on this, many of our lots in the older section of the city on the presidential streets are 50-foot wide. We came up with the measurements at that time that you have to have an 8-foot setback. It used to be 4 foot for safety from buildings between there. You needed 8 foot because of air conditioners, otherwise your air conditioner's into the neighbor's bedroom window. So we had 8-foot setbacks to allow fire protection to go down. That took 16 feet off your 50-foot lot, leaving 17 or 34 feet. And that's where the 17 figure come in. Mm-hmm. People were buying 2 lots and then building, and this is what happened on 350 Monroe, I believe. The man had room for 4 townhomes, but he tried to put 5 on it. And that meant when you have the 8-foot setback on each side, when you get to those end ones, you don't have 20 feet no more. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, on that situation, we have always had minimum sizes in single-family homes, minimum square footage in bedrooms. There is a minimum and a maximum. The maximum is the amount of ground cover of the lot that you can cover, 40% or whatever it is, and not put your house out in the neighbor's setback. We do have minimum, and the code is right here. It's section 110-372 is about townhouses, which was in our little handout. And it does have minimums and maximums. Predictability is probably the end clause and the end result, so that when you buy a place, you know that you're investing in an area that's going to maintain its value. That's about all I know. I was there when it happened.
Attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reading the ordinance. As Councilman Marine was saying, we do have minimums. I'm just trying to clarify that we have minimums for lot sizes. We don't have minimums for the actual home, and we've never had a minimum for any home in this city. So to your point, I'm agreeing with you, when you add in the setbacks with the minimum lots, we're arguing over, we encourage 20-foot homes. We actually, by simply following the rules, can build a 12-foot townhome on the end unit, and that was the aha moment. Wait a minute, we don't like that. And that's where I said, but why not? Why don't we like that? And I've heard a lot of economic reasons, and I'm more concerned about the safety reasons. So please, I'll let the other council, if they'd like, chime in.
Okay.
My question, Wes, is are you concerned about this new tiny house movement? I've been reading about the smaller houses and people being just so darn happy because it's a simple way of life. And that's what I was thinking about as you're talking about this, trying to make some sense out of it. And I thought, this is interesting. Is that what you're concerned about? That people have a right to build a tiny house in Cape Canaveral if they want to?
Not specifically. That is a trend that I think is new, that you're starting to see for some pretty valid reasons why specifically millennials are enjoying smaller spaces. And, you know, you can unpack that and look at that. We've talked about that. I think the different issue here is when you do the formulas on all of the dimensions that we have, we're talking about, you can dice it many ways. I think that we're looking at probably the, quote, smallest home you could possibly build with the existing code, the way it's written today, on an in-town unit is 12 feet. And it was more about this particular scenario. Very good point on townhomes to argue that, yes, actually, people are living in smaller spaces, less amenities and things like that. But I get the fundamental question is really based on why is a 12-foot wide home that checks every box within our zoning requirement as it's written today an issue for us as this council? If you go and talk to that property owner or that person who lives in that 12-foot home on the end, and I don't think that they're going to tell us that their life is miserable. I think that they're going to probably tell us they're happy and that they freely made a choice to move into that home. So it's just, and I don't want us to get too serious up here, but to me, do we really need to make a change? Can we keep it as is? Are we going to say, oh my gosh, you know, the investment community, the predictability, what are we going to do? I don't think it's going to go down that path, but I appreciate, you know, everyone's feedback on the matter. That's what I'm trying to understand some things.
You know, I think the citizens of Cape Canaveral look to the city council for some type of, discipline wouldn't be the word. I know kids and grandkids don't want discipline, but in reality, they do want discipline. I'm listening to Councilman Morrison, and I just can't see his point. I know that, in my opinion, like I'm saying, in my opinion, you would not want somebody moving right next to you with 8-foot wide or 12-foot wide house. You can sit here and say that, but you're a businessman and you respect your property values, and what you're actually arguing against, I just don't see it. I don't understand the point that you're trying to make. I understand that we have the right to build our house, but Cape Canaveral is progressive. We're looking for higher property values. The citizens are looking for us to make these tough decisions. And sometimes the easy decisions are easy to make. The tough decisions are the ones that we need to make. And I think this is a tough decision. I think that's one that it speaks for itself.
Well, thank you all for your feedback. And this is a tough decision. I certainly respect your comment on discipline. And this is why I wanted to go ahead and move forward and amend it as written and pass the conversion issue and give council another 30 days to really think on this and to talk to those property owners that live next to those 12 feet and to say, hey, you know, is this an issue? To go look at the property values of those units and ask ourselves how big of a concern this is. This bundled, loaded amendment as it stands, I wouldn't support, but I would support half of it. So I'm asking for the council to please compromise. And I'd love to hear, once the mayor turns it over to the public, what everyone else has to say. I think we have an opportunity to keep our code simple and to know that 12-foot wide doesn't mean that it's going to be cheap. It doesn't. It means that that can be a very nice unit. Look at the units on Monroe. They're very, very nice properties. And I think that there's many others within the community that can allow for that. So again, thanks the council for all of your feedback on that. And I think you know where I stand. So thanks.
Anybody else? We're going to open up to public. First, Mr. Russell.
If I look a little unsteady, it's true. I am having trouble with my balance, so it's something I'm working through with doctors and other people. I'm not really unstable. I'm doing okay. Lamar Russell, 376 Harbor Drive, Cape Canaveral. Now, this business of talking about a 12-foot wide house, we're straining at a gnat. We don't need 12-foot wide houses at Cape Canaveral. If we've got them, fine, but we don't need to proliferate them by ordinance. So you got an ordinance in front of you that fixes lot widths for townhouses, 20 feet. And our city attorney has very thoughtfully and wisely written this ordinance to dictate 20 feet as the minimum width. And we do that all the time. We have minimums all the time. We have minimum apartment sizes by square foot. It's in the code.
Oh, and we even have minimum parking spaces, don't we?
Minimum parking spaces by square feet.
Yeah.
But, you're saying, should we dictate house size? In 1926, the Supreme Court gave the municipalities the responsibility to control land use through zoning. We have a responsibility to do that. It's not that you're taking something or approaching anybody. We are responsible by Supreme Court decision in 1926 to zone and make regulations for proper land use. So we can do it. So, having said that, we've got an ordinance in front of us that is a good ordinance. And it tries to correct some old problems. And the way you correct old problems is you give them legality and you give them permanence to exist in the future and repair themselves. And that's what this ordinance does. It gives the chance to repair the old width of 16 feet. Fine, we've got a few of those, and we move on. The rest of them will be 20 feet. Period. 12 feet goes by the wayside. That's what will happen if you enact this ordinance, and it's a good ordinance, by the way. What drove the width argument from 16 to 20 was it was a safety problem and a welfare problem in that, and I'll just read from my notes here on page 71.
Make it fast.
What?
Make it quick. Just
All
go ahead and
right.
wrap it up, Lamar.
The way we did that is we made the properties 20 feet wide to accommodate parking. Typical families has 2 cars, and then they grow, and then they have a teenager, and they have 3 cars, and then they want a boat or a camper or something like that. So first thing you know, you got 4 vehicles parking in front of a 16-foot wide lot. Not good. It got to be awful. And we heard about that, and so we fixed it by making the lots 20 feet. Nobody liked that, but anyway, 20 feet. That gives you a chance to park 2 cars side by side and open the doors and get out. And you'd have to park cars one behind the other to get 4 on the driveway. So the 20 feet has logic. And it's rooted in safety and convenience and property values. And I'll just stop right there.
Thank you, Lamar. Thanks, Lamar. Next one is Andrea King, I'm sorry. Andrea.
Shaking, I think.
Good evening, everybody.
Shay King. Good evening.
I'm Andrea Shea King, and I live on Orange Avenue, number 7017, in one of those townhouses, aforementioned townhouses. My concern is tangential to what we're discussing tonight, and it has to do with a question that Councilman Morrison posed on our Cape Canaveral by the Sea Facebook page, asking for input about this very topic. Should the government, city government, blah, blah, blah. And what came out of it was some conversation, mostly instigated by me, about these tiny houses that Councilwoman Raymond brought up. I have a neighbor, I just saw her today. She lives in a tiny little one-bedroom apartment on Orange Avenue. It's attached to a duplex, so it's actually a threeplex. They've raised her rent. She's very concerned about it. She voiced a common concern that we saw on our Facebook page, and that is that people's rents are going up. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them. They're going to be moved out of the beach area that they've lived in all their lives, et cetera, et cetera. Tiny houses, as we've mentioned, are really becoming very popular. And I think that people are going to be looking to those tiny houses to have affordable housing. Nice housing, not your trailer parks, not, but nice housing. And I would ask the city to at least consider that, maybe segregating a certain part of the city for tiny houses so that it's affordable for everybody. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and I thank you for your attention. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public hearing if nobody else there's no more cards. I assume nobody else wants to talk, so we'll close public hearing. Council, back to us.
Just thank you, Mr. Mayor. A comment, and I just can't express this enough, that I understand minimums, and again, I know we have the authority, and I know the Supreme Court gave us that authority as Mr. Russell had expressed. Again, I'm asking, is it right? Cars are getting smaller, so the example of 2 doors opening. People's lives are becoming with less gadgets and gizmos. People are getting married later. We're having less children. And if we can let the supply side of the market adapt, I'm not a huge fan of parking minimums either. I'll throw that out there. I think that there's a compromise there. I think some minimums is a good thing. But I also think that let that Ace Hardware say, we like big wide spots. That's fine. But let somebody else say, you know what, I'm going to do a few big and I'm going to do a few small. Right? More people are riding their bikes. More people are adjusting to this smaller lifestyle, lower utility bills, more disposable income. And we're really arguing over a 12-foot home here, and we're going to eliminate that. So if there isn't a rush on this, which I don't think there is, if a massive proliferation of homes are going to develop in the next 30 days till our next meeting, I'm asking to table this second one. Let's push the second one through, and I'd like to make a motion to do that, please.
I just have a question. If a developer were to come in and propose to build in a section of the city these small homes, would this preclude us at a future date of being able to look into something like that?
Staff has spoke about the possibility of working with a small homes developer in a segment or area of the city. And the general comments, we would have certain standards, obviously, that would need to be met, but we would totally embrace that.
Yeah, and we're talking about apples and oranges here.
Yes, we are.
We're talking, the apples is the townhouse issue.
Right.
The oranges is the small, tiny home issue.
Okay.
And we are fully on board with the tiny home issue. We've talked to some developers about identifying some portions of the city. And although we have minimums, right now we have a minimum square footage requirement for homes in our city of 750. Well, as all of us know, most tiny homes are less than 750. But what we would do is we have our plan development process, our PD process, and we can work on a parcel by parcel basis with the developer on a tiny home project. So it would work perfectly. But try not to get those two issues confused because they're kind of separate.
Yeah, and actually, staff is rather open-minded typically.
Yeah, on this issue, great. Tiny homes are very
We
exciting.
tend to be more liberal than others.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to pick the bones? Because I think we need to just call for a motion.
And I'd like to make a motion to, which I think I already did. Do I need to do it again? Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table the first part of this ordinance and to adopt the second half in regards to, if I need it from the line of, well, let's see here. It's down at the very end where it describes further the conversion of multifamily and single-family homes, and eliminate any language that pertains to minimum building widths, so that we as a council and a body can have time to think about this. I do believe these are two separate issues, and one of them I would call urgent and the other one not, and for those reasons I wish they were submitted separately, but today I'm asking, and in fact, to do that in another way. So that's my motion, if that suffices.
What are you clarifying out? You want to pass just part and to where on, are you working from the front cover sheet?
Sir, point of order. If you move to table an item, it's no longer debatable. You got to vote it up,
Right.
straight up.
I
Vote
want
it
to know
up
what
or
we're
down.
tabling for.
I'm not moving to table anything.
You
I'm
just
moving.
moved to table it a while ago, or do you withdraw that motion?
I think he's trying to clarify part of it and what's a table part of it, which we're going to get to that point.
I do not want to, just for the record, Chair, I do not want to table anything. If that language was used in an effect, it would have the same outcome as a table. I would like to move to amend, eliminating all the language that describes minimum feet,
Can we do that, Anthony?
buildings, minimum widths, and only keep the language that describes the conversion process. So I'm moving for an amendment.
No, but I just want to nip it.
Basically, Wes, what you're wanting to delete is the changes proposed in paragraphs 2 and 3.
Correct.
And maintain the changes in paragraph 8.
Thank you.
Can we do a major change like that on there?
Has this ordinance been advertised for first reading? No, right. We would have to, just point of order, Mr. Mayor, if the council was inclined just to move forward with providing the relief for multifamily and two-family dwellings existing prior to October 1, 1988, that portion of the ordinance on page 3, then we would have to strike through all of the other proposed revisions and, conforming language in the title of the ordinance and in the recitals.
Yeah.
So we could try to do that this evening, or if that was the direction of the council, we could table this matter and revise the ordinance and bring it back to you for first reading at the next meeting.
And may I offer another, what I think is a very practical, pragmatic solution? Tonight, this is just first reading. We won't be having another council meeting for a month. And maybe Councilmember Morrison can further clarify the point that he wants to accomplish and provide language for the council to consider. But we have to be very careful with advertising and what we advertise, and deviating substantially from that could be problematical for a second reading. So my own opinion, and if the council wishes to hear me, I'll be glad to tell you. And if not, I'm about to tell you. I think you need to move forward with this. If the majority of the council doesn't agree with Councilmember Morrison, then that's what this body's responsibility is. It's It takes 3 to make something happen and 3 to keep something from happening. So my recommendation in all candor is move it forward.
We have his motion to deal with. We have to deal with his motion, correct? He made a table.
There was no
motion.
second.
There was no second,
I
so
mean,
it died.
So it died for lack of second.
Nobody seconds the motion on the table. Okay. I didn't get to that point. I was just.
Mr. Mayor, I did,
Well,
which
we'll-
perhaps I shouldn't have.
We'll look for a motion to pass ordinance number 032018 as written.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes, sir. That's for motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept ordinance number 032018 as written.
I second it.
There we have a motion for ordinance 032018 by Council Mayor Pro Tem Brown and Councilwoman Angela Raymond. Second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
4.
Mayor Hogue?
4.
Councilmember Morrison?
Against.
Councilmember Randalls?
Forward at the first reading.
Councilmember Raymond?
4.
Okay, move on to item number 5, an ordinance 2018, providing for pharmacies, medical, treatment, marijuana locations. First reading, Mr. Garganese.
Ordinance number 04-2018, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the location of pharmacies and medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities within the city, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. The ordinance was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended to the City Council that they move forward and adopt this ordinance. We've had quite a bit of discussion in the past about medical marijuana dispensaries. As just very briefly, just to tee this up, as everyone is aware, the Florida legislature adopted legislation to implement the constitutional amendment regarding medical marijuana. In that amendment, specifically related to this topic, they preempted municipal home rule authority in the field of medical marijuana, with the exception that municipalities and counties can regulate the location of medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities. However, the catch is if the council or the city wanted to move forward with regulating the location of medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities, then cities have to treat those facilities in the same manner as pharmacies in general. As you know, the council previously, back in 2017, when all of this was in flux, put a ban in place on medical marijuana treatment facilities. The council has since had more time to think about this and has proposed moving forward with an ordinance to consider locating these facilities within the city. So in order to accomplish that, it went to staff and went to the Planning and Zoning Board, and this ordinance does a couple of things. It defines pharmacy under Florida law, that being necessary because if you're going to regulate medical marijuana dispensing facilities, you have to treat them like pharmacy, so we're putting a definition of pharmacy into the zoning code. In addition, there's a definition for medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities under Florida law, and this ordinance provides that pharmacies / medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities will be a permitted use in the C1 or C2 zoning district, provided that they're on properties adjacent to or contiguous with Highway A1A, otherwise known as Astronaut Boulevard, in North Atlantic, south of International Drive. So that's what this ordinance does. and it's for you to consider. I think Dave you may have sent out a map or regarding the available area along A1A. I don't see it in the package, but I remember seeing one. Be happy to answer any specific questions regarding the ordinance. Dave as well is here to discuss the matter.
Are you looking at us as council, Mayor?
Good to go.
I again would like to phrase it, my understanding to the city attorney, and let him see if I'm thinking right. It's a very humbling experience from a person's personal view within what the law says if something different. But to the city attorney, I would ask, this means that we would prohibit, if we chose not to accept this or acknowledge it, as the governor signed it, this would prohibit our city from ever obtaining a pharmacy such as CVS or Walgreens if we don't adopt this. Is that correct?
No, that's
No.
not correct. No. This ordinance and state law doesn't prohibit pharmacies within the city. All this ordinance says is if the cities want to regulate the location of medical marijuana dispensing facilities, then the city has to treat them just like
Yes.
pharmacies. So
That was my point.
it's somewhat of an illogical connection, dispensing facilities and pharmacies, but that's the connection that the legislature has made. So if the city wants to allow these medical marijuana dispensing facilities, they have to be treated just like pharmacies. So moving forward with this ordinance, when staff was evaluating this from a zoning perspective, staff had to ask, well, if we're going to allow these medical marijuana treatment dispensing facilities, then they need to be in locations that are also appropriate for pharmacies.
Okay.
Because they have to be treated the same. So when staff looked at not just the dispensing facility aspect, they looked at it more globally for pharmacies, and staff is recommending, and the Planning and Zoning Board is recommending, that for these two particular uses that are now conjoining twins, complement of the Florida legislature, they would be appropriate in the C1 and C2 zoning district along Highway A1A.
I'd like to clarify something.
Yeah,
to
please,
kind of
Dave.
piggyback on what Anthony's saying. Anthony is 100% correct. C1, C2 adjacent to or contiguous with Astronaut and A1A south of basically where Cumberland Farm is.
Okay.
As long as it's within the Economic Opportunity Overlay District. So just those C1 and C2 properties within the overlay district. And if you think about the overlay district, that district is, it's been established and it's been operating in the city for a number of years, so it's kind of a known quantity. And it was established for a location for I'll call it our commercial district.
I understand.
And that was the specific reason why we didn't go, because we do have C1 and particular C1 going up North Atlantic, north of Cumberland. But we didn't feel that was appropriate because North Atlantic, north of Cumberland, is more of a mixed bag. There are a lot more residential uses in there. And therefore, we didn't feel it would be appropriate to allow a pharmacy and or a medical marijuana treatment facility in those areas of the city that perhaps are leaning a little bit more residential. And that's why we focused it on the Astronaut in North Atlantic and within the overlay district.
Mayor, if I may comment, your map that you gave us, and I guess, I don't know if the audience has one like that little map. The area of concern we're talking about is along basically A1A in the commercial C1 and C2, not North Atlantic Avenue, north of Cumberland Farms.
That is correct.
That's
Yes.
correct. Okay. So this kind of gets to a person as to what we think and what we want and what we know is best for the city.
Thank you.
I made some notes here to refresh my memory, and knowing what a pharmacy is, and that's very helpful. Anybody that may dispense Schedule 2 and 3 controlled substances. Now, I don't know if that evaluates marijuana or not, but I would guess it probably includes that.
Schedule 1, but that's another
Okay.
story. Currently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there's one here, and I'm on page 2, and it's line 14. Thank whoever put the numbers along the side because we can really find it. It says, the city council therefore determines that it's the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Cape Canaveral to allow pharmacies and medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities, which is brother and sister, if we think about it, brothers maybe, within the boundaries of the city, subject to the limitations. We got all kinds of limitations. And then in Division 1, we're taking out medical and marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities out of supplemental district regulation. I understand it, and I will have to support it because that's what's best for the city. Someday we may need or want a pharmacy. And will it be used? I don't know. Will it ever happen? We don't know. If it has to be, and if the state legislature has says that thou shalt do it, and we took the stand back in 2014, that we didn't want it, and we got overridden by pre-exemption and a lot of things with the state, the governor has, thou shalt have one, if you ever want a pharmacy, if I understand it correctly. You can't distinguish the difference between the two. If that's true, I certainly would support it against my better judgment. So if that opens the door for some council thing, it's the city's good over my personal feelings. But we have to go there.
Ms. Reed?
I support it. 71% of the electorate voted in favor of medical marijuana facilities. As I was canvassing, I saw people with MS, cancer, who were begging for me to support this, and I definitely will. When you think in terms of the village is the most conservative county in the entire state. They have 3 medical marijuana facilities.
Wow.
Because it's necessary for the people and their aging community and people who are sick, who need this. They are getting a 4th facility, I understand, from my research. And I think that this is the right thing to do. As I said, there are people suffering and begging for this. And there's another issue of transportation. Rocky, as you know, you sit on the transportation board. A lot of people cannot get to Titusville or Rockledge. So there are delivery services, and some of the delivery services are delivering in Cape Canaveral. And so I think if someone decides to have the business here, then they should. And it's just like a pharmacy. I think that people get confused between recreational marijuana and medical marijuana. And you always have to make that distinction, please. Thank you.
It's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I prepared just a statement, if you don't mind, I'd like to read so we get this right. There's cities, there's people all over the country who are watching Cape Canaveral, or maybe I'm just a little kind of egotistical, but I think Cape Canaveral is a special place and people are watching us closely what we do, so I want to get this right. Today we have an opportunity to approve a physical storefront access for patients who have been prescribed medical marijuana. If you think about it, we have the ability to create a form of prohibition for access, or we can improve it. Abraham Lincoln said, prohibition strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. And that those principles are freedom and the liberty to choose. And that's what made this country so special. Of all the negative consequences of prohibition, none is as tragic as the denial of medicinal marijuana to the tens of thousands of seriously ill patients who could benefit from its use. This includes cancer patients, AIDS patients, glaucoma patients, and those suffering from chronic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, and a variety of spastic conditions such as multiple sclerosis and epilepsy. Marijuana can be immediately made available by prescription, and we currently stand in the way of helping Cape Canaveral citizens obtain it as easy as possible due to the lack of access that we have today. If you think about it, 1/3 of the U.S. population suffers from chronic pain, but medical care has too long relied on dangerous opioids as the solution. When you look at this issue nationally, we lose around 100 people a day and as high as 60,000 in the year 2016 alone to opioid deaths, and this number is growing dramatically. We all know someone probably in this room, in this community, within our families, who's been impacted by opioid addictions and even lost their lives. And addiction is blind to income levels or status. It affects the wealthy and it affects the poor. Opioid medication is backed by the large pharmaceutical companies, and the last thing that they want to hear tonight is that Cape Canaveral is going to ease the access for its residents to utilize this herb, this over-regulated vegetable, that competes with their products. I do not want to be in the way of stopping someone from getting out of pain, and I definitely don't want to be the reason that someone suffers emotional pain from losing a loved one where they were hooked on some synthetic prescription with no other choices here locally. I'm in full support of this, and when you look at the voter support in the state of Florida at 71%, this county mirrored at 71%, and Cape Canaveral's support was at 75% for medicinal marijuana. The truth is that no one in Cape Canaveral in pain because they suffer from a, quote, debilitating medical condition can obtain marijuana to alleviate his pain without jumping through numerous hoops and going to a great expense, even though they can easily purchase Tylenol, aspirin, and alcohol. These three alone kill hundreds of people every year, especially alcohol, and yet the number of deaths related to marijuana still is a big whopping 0. A policy that bans medical marijuana treatment facilities here in Cape Canaveral deprives qualified patients, and this places unnecessary hardship on these patients with limited mobility and financial security. It is crucial that medical marijuana dispensaries and pharmacies be readily accessible to patients throughout and across our entire community here in the city of Cape Canaveral. And for those reasons, I do support this. Thank you.
Very good. That's
Very good. I think the citizens of the state of Florida have clearly spoken on this issue. As a retired law enforcement officer, I would never felt that on a situation that come to me like this that I would vote in support of it, but it's bigger than me. And I know, like Councilman Morrison said, there are so many people that actually need this, and they need the dispensary, and they don't have the transportation situation to get to other cities to purchase the medicinal marijuana. So I'm definitely in support of it also.
I echo the council. I think it's something that I know some people personally that would love to probably make use of this, but we have our people that think it's going to bring on the recreational marijuana in time to come, but we can keep our eye out on that and control that, I'm pretty sure. That's a different ballgame than what we're talking about. So I'm going to support this, and I think Mr. Morrison's letter and his words were right on target, so I don't have a problem with supporting something that's going to be helpful. So we're going to open it up to the people out in the audience. If you would like to talk about this, don't have any cards, but if anybody wants to mention anything, we'll take a second and let you have it before we bring it up here. Everybody understands what's going on? Yes, ma'am. Just give us your name, please, and you can fill out a card before you can do it now, but you can just come up here and after you get through, the cards are out in the lobby, but you can fill it out just for the record.
Just for clarity purposes, you have opened the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay,
So-
hi, my name is Martha Vance, and I live at 214 Adams. Unfortunately, the sheriff's department has been at my house many times because my daughter is a heroin addict.
She's still alive. She's doing well in Omaha, Nebraska. She had to get out of the state of Florida. So I definitely see both sides of the medical marijuana situation. I've been very torn on it. I wasn't prepared at all to talk about this today, so I apologize if I'm not going to be very direct. I'm very torn about it. I want people to receive the medicinal help, although it's pretty much a social media joke and a joke in society about, yeah, I'll just have my doctor give me a script. And we recently had a huge drug bust here at the port for a cruise that was a big party cruise. Many people got busted, and I specifically remember reading that one. I actually, maybe it was even the woman who organized the cruise. This big party cruise was she had a prescription for medical marijuana. Well, sorry, honey, it's not legal here in this state yet. And so my biggest concern is whether or not the doctors are going to legally prescribe people who really need it, or are they going to be, handing out, the prescriptions, sure, go right ahead, and you've got a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety here. Here's a prescription for medical marijuana. My husband and I are retiring here. I'm 57. He will turn 60 this year. He works for Boeing, top secret clearance, and has been with Boeing for 38 years. Our house is paid off, and we are retiring here. It makes me uncomfortable to think with the current drug problems we do have here in Cape Canaveral to have a marijuana dispensary. I'm very torn. I want those people to get, the people who really need it to get it. But I do want to tell you that during the time when I was trying to get, my daughter agreed to go into rehab, and we were trying to we basically put her in lockdown in our house, waiting for an opening in rehab and getting her there. And she would escape and walk out of our door in her pajamas, and within 15 minutes come back with a handful of heroin, Xanax, and Oxys. I confiscated them myself and made her watch me flush them down the toilet. So I've lived the nightmare. I thank God she's still alive. But we're retiring here, and I don't know, I'm not completely, I have lots of friends who smoke weed just to relax, but I don't. But I'm just not comfortable because we are a small city. We're very small. We're very small. I would rather
have to conclude, ma'am. We're listening to you, but you're going to have to.
No, I've got time. Sorry.
Your time's up.
Anyway, I'm not real comfortable about this, but you guys do what you see fit. Thank you.
I think it'll be worked out. Your concerns are under AMA, the American Medical Association. We have doctors today that prescribe medications that probably really shouldn't be prescribed, not only. I agree. But I hear what you're saying, but it'll fall into that category maybe. But let's go ahead and close it up. We're going to close public hearing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, come on up. Just watch the little light. You have to say your name again for the record, please.
David Henry, Melbourne, Florida. Since you did bring it up, I did want to reassure the speaker just now. So what I've been seeing, because I've been losing friends for a very long time in this community, and they're of all walks of life and of all races. It affects people from the most urban environments to the most affluent areas in the state and in the county. There's nothing you can do to stop what's going to happen to our peers, older, younger. And I'm touched by what she said. She's a very good parent, very good parent. The only thing you can do to save someone is lock them down when they're on prescription medication. Prescription medication for those of us who don't have insurance, we have to deal with the anxiety. There's no script to write us. I know, and I don't want to discuss anything further other than that, but doctors are writing scripts for frequent customers, if you will, off the books, if you will, and there's unlimited access to prescription medication. I was thinking about it. I don't want my daughter participating in smoking marijuana and whatnot because I don't want her to be susceptible, but I'm being a dad. But it is a lot better than having anything to do with prescription medication, and this marijuana directly competes with prescription medication and will drive it a wedge out of your communities. I'm very passionate about that because I've lost a lot of friends, and I think we just need to, well, I'm not gonna say we, I would recommend you guys accept it for what it is, because there's no defeating prescription medication outside of what she did for her own child, or allowing a room for competition so it gets out of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I have one comment. We're a city population of about 10,000. From a business angle and for a business opportunity, we may never have a medical marijuana facility in Cape Canaveral because of our numbers. So I just wanted to make that statement because they're probably thinking about 50 to 70,000 population that would be able to use a facility. That's why right now there's one in Rockledge and Titusville and not in Cape Canaveral or Cocoa Beach.
Real quick, Mr. Green, has anybody come forward or to you about the interest of putting a possible dispensary in the city?
We have had some inquiries via email, I think in particular, David, if I recall correctly. Yes, there have been some. They're from the companies that are well recognized by the state, that are totally licensed and meet all of the established criteria. Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, actually, it's a great segue from Mayor Pro Tem Brown's question. The property owners that are south of the economic overlay district in that commercial area, I had an opportunity to speak with some of them, and more importantly, I spoke with the residents, a handful, who had lived back on that Holman Road area. And if we remember historically, there was talks of a gas station going in, and that was a very vocal group of people, and our staff worked really hard to try to make a nice proposal today. I would like to consider us to expand along A1A and even Atlantic, which I think is a very unlikely area if I was a pharmacist to go for all C1 and C2 districts. The reason why is because I don't see the major issue. Traffic is going to be no different south of the economic overlay district. For those of you who are looking at the map, it's that lower red strip there on the bottom. Correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much I think it's 11 parcels. Just to give you a visual, if you're driving down A1A, we're really talking about, think of Sunseed Co-op, the empty property there. I think it's Kurt Tizell's property. And there's a few other commercial properties there. And I think it's important to give them the same opportunity as a property owner to have a pharmacy or a medical marijuana treatment facility, and really want to listen to the council's opinion on that to see if we can expand it beyond the EOD. And just to clarify even further, which I think, again, the options are highly limited, north on Atlantic, I think it's only C1 district within that area as well. Thoughts, concerns, comments? So I guess if in a perfect world, the amendment would be to allow full C1 and C2 access. And I spoke with staff about this and our city manager as well prior. So
it's a question that you're asking, Mr. Councilman Morrison, that you want to open the entire A1A and North Atlantic Avenue for, did I misunderstand you?
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brown. Just the 11 extra parcels on the southwest side of the property. I mean, the majority of the A1A is open. And then the remaining few parcels really on the corner of Central, I think, are your most likely areas there as well. Spaceman Storage, the empty parcel where the Straw Hat was, the empty lot, Kurt Dazell's property. And then also, I think it's a Seaside Realty there on this corner. Those would be opportunities, but most importantly, that entire western side of A1A there, outside the Economic Overlay District. 11 additional parcels on A1A, and I'm unsure about the amount on Atlantic.
I wouldn't have a problem with the A1A district, but I think along the North Atlantic, I think you got the area where you talked about Straw Hat Club and that area right in there. I don't have a problem, but a North Atlantic area, I wouldn't support too much on North Atlantic, but on Astronaut and South North Atlantic, I would support personally. Because I think you got more residential up in that area than you can count the businesses on one hand up in there. But the North Atlantic corridor south of Cumberland Farms, down in that area, yeah, and North Astronaut on out. You want both C1 and C2?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. Up to the rest of the council. But I wouldn't support North Atlantic opening that up to it. Everybody got their thinking hats on.
Mr. Mayor.
Anybody want to do anything different, or do we just move on forward with what we got?
Mayor, I guess I'd like to move forward with what we've got. The reason I say that because from Grant Street South in their prospective area, now we're only looking to the ones on the east side of the road because the west side is county from Grant South.
Right, correct.
And we certainly have no control over their decision.
That's correct.
The east side of A1A is county.
Right.
And west is
And
Cape Canaveral.
the west
He
we
wants
have,
to do
which
just
is
the west side. He
yeah.
said that's all we can do, but I understand where he's going, but I don't have a problem with that. I don't know, now he says he's talked to the residents. We did just strictly the overlay district. That's where we started out with this, and then we're stretching it outside of that. I don't have a problem with it, but I would rather not do it tonight as the first reading. I would like to really hear from the residents along there if they have a problem. Rather than putting it in there tonight, we pass what we got and we can come back the second time and change it. But I think the residents along that area should be well aware of what's going to happen. Because we've been advertising this, just the overlay district. And if we start expanding it outside of everything without advertising, then we're not doing justice to the citizens.
We've advertised the economic overlay district, but we have not advertised this particular
Correct. That's
issue
what I'm
here.
saying.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, the thought was, I was just waiting for discussion. It didn't sound like there were any more, and I would like to make a formal motion for it. And I respect what you say there. And if those residents come out, that would be a great opportunity to do so. And the other thing that I want to point out is the fear that residents would be concerned, right? So this, we're talking about by a ballot initiative, 25% of the people were not in support of this. So I would just want to do a little statistics with you here and just think about this for a second. If you're a resident in an R1 zone, which is that light white area down on probably the bottom left side of your screen, those are the lowest intensity developments within the community. Or if you're like our on Long Point Road, the same exact zoning where our very own Josh and Miss Green live, and let's say some of the folks there oppose this idea, by eliminating this area down here and saying no commercial, no pharmacies, no medical marijuana treatment facilities, we are dramatically increasing the chances that that development will go next to them. Why is that a problem? Well, now, because we created that particular issue. So just some logic behind it. If we didn't, and we let the spontaneous pin drop wherever that business saw fit, and there's a strong argument to be made, those are some great properties down there, then I don't feel as responsible as a policymaker of saying, we opened it up on every parcel along A1A. It just so happened to land in that area to where someone who lives on Long Point Road can now come to me and go, you know what, had you not, eliminated that area, we would have been okay. So that was just some things that I had thought about as well to consider to keep it fair. And with that, I would like to make a formal motion to add in respect Mayor Hoag's recommendation to only include all parcels C1 and C2 along A1A and the proposed few parcels south of, correct me if I'm wrong, International, that the existing proposal along Atlantic, and reserve that area to respect the residential community just north there. So if that motion is clear, to expand the allowable area just south along A1A and keep it as recommended on all other parts to all C1 properties within the city of Cape Canaveral.
I would like to clarify something you said. You said that I recommended to add those in there. I didn't recommend them. I said that I would have no problem supporting it. But you need to get the concurrency of this council before I support anything. And if you get your second and it comes to a vote, then we'll see. But I'm not wanting to add it. I didn't propose to add it. I just said that I would have no problem supporting that. But I want to see what the council wants to do. I like to do things, what we're advertised here to do tonight, and vote on it. And then if we want to change it, we can change it second reading and get it changed. But you're asking to change things that we haven't advertised. So if the council feels like they want to change this without advertising it, then I'll go along with the council. But I don't like, that's like bait and switch advertising. It don't work. So if you want to make your motion to however you want to make it and see if you get a second, we'll see where it goes. That's all.
Just to be clear, I'd like to ask our city manager, this will require an advertisement?
We advertise for second reading.
Okay. Yes.
The first reading was advertised as well.
What's it on this one?
Yeah, this ordinance, since it changes the list of permitted uses in the zoning district, right, was advertised
Yes, it does. Yes.
prior to first reading, and then it'll be advertised again after second reading.
Well, if any other council member would like to second my motion, now is the time to do so.
Is there a second? If not, the motion will fail. We'll have to pass what we got before us. Or make
All
a
right.
motion to pass.
I'd like to move that we move forward with ordinance number 04, 2018, as written.
Do we have a second?
Mayor, I would second that. Randall speaking.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Raymond and a second by Councilman Randalls. You call the, oh, I need to open this to public discussion.
Already did.
Did I
Already
close it?
did. We've had public
so
comment.
long, I forgot. I'm sorry. Okay, let's call the motion, or call the roll, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Four.
Mayor Hogue,
Four.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
4.
Okay, we're, my glasses, can't read anymore. Going to move on to item number 6. This is a policy discussion related to Community Redevelopment Agency board meetings. And I guess we've all read this cover sheet. Mr. Morrison, this is your item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a proposed, and want to thank the staff for putting this on the agenda to discuss tonight. And I think the recommendation was provide direction to the council. If we wanted to move to our staff by the council to move forward with an ordinance, just to shed a little light for the public, the Community Redevelopment Agency is a special district. It's a separate governing body with that's funded by tax incremental financing. So think about it as a separate organization who manages your money as the taxpayers here. It's allowed by the state of Florida, and they're going to be here for a while until they sunset. I think we at least have a few decades of running room. And with that, we've made a decision here internally to make this council, your elected officials, the board on that. And I believe our director is Dave Dickey, and with some authorities, obviously, within our city manager. So think of it as a separate body. In fact, the state allows that private citizens like yourself, with some rule changes and some decisions made here on council, could open it up. And a few community redevelopment agencies allow private citizens to get involved on those boards. Today, it's the people who at the ballot box you elected, and we felt like that was consistent with the best representation for you, I believe, at the time. These were set up in 2012. It's been a tool to allow us to do some projects, and the main focus was to keep tax dollars here to address blight within the community. And it's allowed a lot of the things that I think many of you are proud of and are happy to enjoy here within the city. So it's been a very good blessing in respects. The frequency of meetings has been proposed by resolution, simply once a year at minimum, to where we would meet, and that board typically comes in a little earlier than a council meeting, I think around 5:30, and then that board would make a decision on the dates for the year on when we would meet. In the past, from what I can see, it's been proposed on quarterly meetings. And in that resolution, it says a line that basically says at the very bottom that in the event there is no business, the meeting will not be held. And what I thought about, and I think it was important for me to share, is the fact that this body is very similar. It is a tax-funded, it's spending taxpayer money. It's very similar to a council in respect. It's got a geographic area that it's responsible for. It uses money that's funded by you. And in fact, you have the same people who govern that board there as well. And one of the things that I took a particular interest in was how the meetings were mirrored the existing city council. And if you look at the ordinances of city council, it talks about how often we meet, right there in the code, in the ordinances. And the reason why is because, it's important. It's important that we're, in the sunshine meeting and talking, discussing budget items, proposing policy, debating policy, and enacting policy. And in this case, the same thing happens in our CRA, for the most part. I noticed that there was an inconsistency in the rules that it gave us as a governing body, as a council, for what it would take to cancel a meeting. And specifically, city council meetings are canceled by consensus. So this council, by consensus, would cancel. And in the past, I've had agenda items that, I want to add it, and there's clear rules on what it takes to add those to the agenda in the CRA. But I felt like, specifically, I had in the past, some areas where, I wanted to talk about the CRA, and I realized, wow, it got canceled, and no fault to staff or anyone. It was perfectly allowed. And I said, you know what? This is a separate governing body. I want to talk with our council who has been appointed as the CRA board and get your thoughts on mirroring this CRA board to the same rules as our council. And I think that the logic is just based that we play by a lot of the same rules, as I've hopefully demonstrated as a counseling body for this community. So that's the 10,000-foot in-depth overview of the logic there. And I guess if you were to ask me why it's important, we've got a little balance of powers here in Cape Canaveral. Just like our federal government has a balance of powers, the executive and the legislative branch, we are your legislators up here. We make policy. We make rules and ordinances. And our very own David Green is the equivalent to the executive branch, and he's got a big job to do, and he does a great job of executing on those policies. And the way it's written today is that our executive team can simply cancel a meeting, and there's no consent. Not that it was done in any ill will whatsoever, but there's no obligation to consult with this governing body. And I think that the people, we are closer to you as the people, and you want to know how those monies are being spent, and that we reserve the right as your elected officials to make decisions for those meetings. So just trying to mirror, I guess, our federal government as well there in respects to what is good. So thank you.
The only thing I have to say, with the CRAs, it seems like, I understand if there's no business necessary with the redevelopment of the community, it seems like there should be always, at least once a year, that we have something to talk about. When was the last meeting?
Typically, since it's been created, you've met at least once per year on or about budget time when you adopt the budget, and that's when you approve projects for the year to be completed, as well as any budget amendments or adjustments, and that's when you also establish the meeting schedule. So there is a minimum of one meeting per year, every year.
Okay.
To answer part of Mr. Morrison's concerns about not meeting, I would, I don't know if I have something that I need to, like, if you have something you want to talk about or bring up a CRA item, I do things of this nature. I go see Mr. Green. That's my first point, or maybe one of the gentlemen, the directors or whoever is in charge of that area where I'm going to be, and put that on their plate and let it ferment, you might say, with them. And then go back and talk to whoever that person is, and let's see if it can be put on our council agenda. And you're speaking of CRA, so that probably would work the same way. We haven't really had anything in here that, other than capital projects that we've done under the CRA that we've approved. So there's nothing like a business would approach you, I guess, or me, or somebody would want to maybe do something under the CRA. That's where you would probably take that to.
Yeah,
maybe Mr.
I think we're getting a little bit off track here at the moment. Council Member Morrison did not discuss, to my recollection, why he felt there should be a meeting until after the decision had been made not to have a meeting. And Council may recall that we're in the middle of negotiations with the county because they have some real heartburn over CRAs, as has the Florida legislature. Now, prior to Councilmember Morrison coming on the city council, staff had prepared a number of potential programs, facade grants and sign replacement and assisting certain businesses, matching funds, all of these, with moving the dollars up towards grant funds for specific projects, and it's pretty complicated because we have to have the ability to protect the public's investment in those properties and et cetera. But we have a number of programs prepared, and what I told him when we spoke about it was that we would envision that those would be included in the budget. That's a policy document. It's adopted by ordinance, and that would be part of a CRA discussion at the appropriate time so the council could give direction. The budget is already established for now with the CRA. We're still in the middle of negotiations with the county, and it's there's a degree of tension going back and forth between the county and the cities over CRAs. And so I think the proper characterization is we know when we need to meet. I'll be blunt to the city council. Some of us have been working for the city now about 14 hours today, and we're still talking. And, you know, there are limited resources here and limited time and limited dollars. And I'm just merely saying, can't we focus rather than shotgun things? And what I think I've done as city manager is we've had a very singular focus on policy goals and objectives, implementing the vision plan, et cetera. And frankly, Wes and I disagree on what policy is and what administration is. We do not end up on the same page for that. And again, I'll be blunt, he's one member of the city council. I work for at least 3. Or not work for 3, whichever way you all so choose.
And I appreciate that. And with all due respect, Mr. Green, I really wanted to hear the council's opinion on that. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for sharing your approach as well. The truth is, we're all not going to be here probably in 10 years serving. And if we don't today put together an ordinance that's timeless, that's future-proofed, and that protects this community, specifically you, the taxpayers, that we're at risk, because that's what we do as policymakers, to say no matter who's in the seat, there's some limitations to power. And I'll be blunt with you, I do not like the fact that our city manager has the ability to simply cancel a meeting with not asking one of us, your governing body, if we have anything that we need to discuss. And please, council and mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, before those meetings were canceled, my phone never rang and said, hey guys, you got anything you want to put on this CRA meeting? We advertised it, it was out in the community, and I get it. It's just been the way things have been going. But I believe that we can make a positive change here, and it doesn't have to be a negative impact. My question right back at you is, what is your major concern? You have all the same things within the resolution, and our council now can cancel 3 meetings a year, continue the one just like we have been, but now we've restored the power back to the people, and we're treating the CRA with the respect that I think it deserves.
Brad, have anything you want to add?
I do, but I'm not a member of the council. I think what Wes just said is a complete misrepresentation of how things work. We have a very good rapport and relationship with the council as a whole. My experience with the council has been when a member of the council wants to discuss something, they come to the staff and they say, hey, I have a concern about X, Y, or Z. Let's get that on the agenda. I'd like to bring that up.
And many times that does not require action by the majority of the members of the city council.
But just a clarifying moment, Dave. Agree, and I think that we all know I have been very active with working with staff throughout this entire process. Again, what I am describing is not the people here today. I'm describing a framework that works, that has protections in it. And that's it. I'm not attacking the characters. You lawfully canceled a meeting. They're due to the lack of law. And that's what concerns me, because I said it for our council, you're not going to be around here probably in 25, 30 years either. So policy should be timeless, and that's really what I'm expressing. So in no way did I say that you're trying to take advantage of it. I just saw that if something was to happen, this allows us to be protected moving forward.
I hear you, Wes. I understand what you're saying.
And I do too, but I understand also what's not being said. And I think what we have, and let me see if I can describe it, Wes had difficulty accepting the fact that the city council previously had said there's no need to have a meeting if there's no business to be conducted. I made the decision that there was no business needing to be conducted at this point in time. Shame on me. Additionally, Wes has written as such in his mind that staff, meaning me and you as the community development director, do not have a seat at the table when it comes to determining whether or not there is a meeting and whether or not a meeting is canceled. I think that is very indicative of where he's coming from, frankly, Wes, behind your eyes. And I really could care less one way or the other. I think the point is, and I have to say this, once again, you've hijacked the meeting and don't want to approve anything and everything that comes up at the meeting. You go on and on and on. We've been here 2 hours now handling less than a half a dozen agenda items. And at some point, majority rules. I can go on forever. But I think the simple thing that you must accept is you're one member of the city council. You are not 3 members. You are 1 member.
Thank you. And we'll continue to disagree. I just think that this is a benign rule. This is a $4 million building. And if we're going to build something that's $4 million, we're going to use it. And I am in no way delaying anything. I'm passionate about this community. And I do not see any harm or foul in what I've proposed. And in fact, I think it strengthens us. And I think this council has enough confidence within itself to know exactly what their vote means and without your reminder. And that's who I really want to hear from today.
Well, we have a set thing as far as the CRA board. I'll tell you. We have a set thing. We set it out when we formed the thing. We set minimum of 4 meetings a year if we got business. We started out as a CRA, which everybody in their mind had the idea that we were going to give grants and facade grants and blah, blah, blah as a CRA. Well, blighted areas, we've attacked that. We've done things to improve the areas. We've done things to improve the facilities in the areas to kind of take the blight out. But now we've got all the capital projects for this year on the CRA. We've already been to our CRA meeting the first part of the year. We're into the budget year. We'll have another one. But if we don't have any projects, why do we need to have a meeting? Mr. Green knows when we need a meeting, if we've got a project, or if I go in there and tell him, say, hey, David, we need to blah, 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 and then we will bring that to a concurrency for this board to have a meeting. But if we don't need a meeting, why have a meeting? We're protected. You're trying to make it like we're not protected. We got an ordinance here that we have to follow, and we will follow it. We do have concurrency for a meeting 4 times a year. If we don't need a meeting, why should we meet?
100%.
If you want to
Yeah, I
meet,
agree.
if you want to meet, go to staff and tell staff what you have on your mind. Staff will then set up a CRA meeting for this CRA board to meet.
Staff will then set up a CRA meeting if a CRA meeting is necessary.
See, that's the difference, David.
Wes, some of us don't live to go to meetings.
There's not a necessary meeting every month.
I'm not proposing a mandatory 4 meetings. I'm giving us an easy ability to cancel. It's no different. We set the agenda as council. And I appreciate your recommendation.
It must have went in this or not. You as a council member has that right to go to Mr. Dickey and ask for an item for a CRA meeting. That's what we got.
I don't need to ask anyone for anything. We need to set a meeting. That is as simple as
You're stretching
that.
the word.
No,
You're
and I
stretching the word.
say that, just
I'm saying
don't
you
forget.
go in to talk to one of the directors, whoever it is, and say whatever your item is, and we'll have a meeting.
When
Why
it
do you
comes.
want to meet every?
When it comes to setting an agenda, the 5 people, including yourself, Mr. Mayor, are given full authority by this ordinance to set an agenda, to have a meeting. That's all I'm saying. Your style is different than my style. You might want to go ask our wonderful staff if they want to set an agenda, or ask. I'm in the business.
Okay, then whenever you feel like having a
And if I
CRA
don't get
meeting, set one up.
interrupted, if
We'll
I
go
don't,
with you.
okay,
If
I
that's
just
what you
appreciate
do.
if you don't interrupt me. It's, if I'm out of conduct, that I think
I
that
want
would.
to get moving on. We've been here a
Absolutely.
long time.
All I'm asking for is to have the ability to provide some format for a meeting, and I wanted to hear, I've heard your opinion. If the other council doesn't have an opinion on it, I think that the CRA is a little executive heavy as it is today, and I think that the people deserve to have the body decide on if a meeting's canceled. That the body is notified when a meeting is going to be canceled. And I get all this under the table, hey, this is kind of how we do it, and nothing's
It's not under the
about
table,
it.
Wes.
Table's right here in writing.
Where
It's
in
an ordinance. It's not under the table.
where is there an ordinance that says that the city manager has to notify one of these, the board, when they're going to cancel a meeting?
Not in an ordinance. I'll just tell you right now, you know it's not in an ordinance.
And that's what I'm asking
You
for.
want to hold
Where-
one every month?
I'll tell you where it
Well,
is. I'll tell you exactly where it is, Wes. The CRA plan, which I know you're familiar with, that's the Bible for the CRA. And if you're familiar with that Bible, it tells us exactly what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be doing it. The plan says that the CRA board establishes policy, and you establish your budget. And as Mr. Green said earlier, your budget is your policy for that year. Those are your programs that you want to see happen and how you want to spend the CRA money. The CRA plan also states that the staff is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the CRA. That's the distinction. And I think what you're saying is, well, you feel like the board shouldn't. That's not day-to-day. That's policy-making on whether we have a meeting or not. And I think what we're suggesting is that's kind of the day-to-day operations. If, as the mayor is saying, if we need a meeting, let's have a meeting. But you need to communicate. And I think that's sometimes where you and I communicate well. I think we do. I feel we have good lines of communication. But let us know. And that's totally open. And I think the other members of the council and or the CRA board take advantage of that. If they have issues and concerns, let staff know, and we'll make it happen for you. It's that simple.
Mayor, I don't have a solution perhaps, but I, for one, don't wish to meet for a meeting if there's no business. We'd look like a fool if we came here and says, be here at 6 next Thursday, and what's the agenda? Well, there isn't any. Why are we here? I would suggest that this could be resolved if we have 4 scheduled meetings tentatively. If indeed, when that date comes up, whether it's September the 12th or whatever it is, perhaps a note to each one of us in the form of a memo. This is a scheduled date. Does anybody have anything they wish to bring up?
No problem with that.
I could live with that.
That's what we already do. I mean, you guys approve the schedules and the dates. And you decided, not me, you guys decided that if there was no need to have a meeting, we wouldn't have a meeting. What he is saying is he doesn't like me to be able to say that there is no need for a meeting, therefore there is no meeting. That's what he's saying. I'm hired help, I shouldn't do that.
With all due respect, you said that that's what we're already doing. That is not what you're doing. No one received any notice, as Councilmember Randall's recommended, which I think is a fine idea, that we've got a meeting coming up. Does any of this governing body, please correct me if I'm wrong. No one's notified. You have
never gotten an email that the meetings have been canceled?
Isn't that funny? I get an email saying it's been canceled.
Okay.
It's over. It's canceled.
There's nothing
I
to
want a
do.
meeting. I want an email saying we have a meeting coming up may I have permission to cancel because I have no business?
See, that's what it comes down to.
That has not happened.
It's an ego issue.
That's something, I'm not going to support that. I'll just.
You know, when you talk to me like that, Mr. Green, you're talking to the people who elected me. I can take it, and that's what they elected me. But it's the people out there and the residents who checked my name on the box, and I wouldn't stand up for it for any of these council members. There's no ego issue here. It's a balance of powers. It sounds like you don't want to let go of something. In fact, I will gladly give you the authority, along with council as a proposal, and if this council wants it, to be included in that. Why wouldn't we have your opinion? You're a very important person within this process. But to say there's an ego on the line, that's a little below the belt.
It won't be the first thing I heard below the belt coming from you this evening either, sir.
Let's just move on.
Mayor, let's get back to the point of discussion. We have it added on the very bottom of this, ordinance number 23, 2012. I believe that's when we started this. And I think in there it had tentative meetings scheduled.
Yes, it did,
For a
sure.
year.
Yeah. So we do have a tentative plan.
But, I mean, if you want to email, we get an email that the meeting's canceled, we don't have a meeting. I'm not going to go and say, well, why don't we have a meeting? I know there's no business because we didn't set any business.
No disagreement. And
Well,
I think we've
let's
accomplished a
just
lot with that alone. That would
move
be,
on then, if you
the
don't
discussion was productive with that outcome by itself.
Wes, I'd just like to say one thing. If you have anything you want to bring to a meeting, let me know. It's that simple, and we will bring it to the board.
Thank you.
Very simple.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on our screen, I don't know if it's up there or not, but it does show the tentative CR. Somebody did that real quick. But it does show on the 2018 City Council regular meeting schedule, and over on the right, coming down there, it talks about when the CRA meetings is June the 19th. It would be our next one, I guess. The last one was March 20th, and it says if needed, and we didn't have any business and didn't have it, so the next one is, according to what I'm reading, I don't know if you have it up there above you, but it's in June, CRA meeting at 5:30 p.m. if needed. Is that what's up there?
Yep.
Correct.
That is what's up there, yes.
Right. Now, if we have something come up, we'll have a meeting. But if we don't have any business, why?
Thank you. I don't know how you found it so quick, but thank you.
It's all over the place.
All right,
You guys received it and approved it in November.
Board, do we have consensus to go with Mr. Morrison's recommendation to have a notice of all this, no meetings and all the changes that we said all this in policy when I think I was part of the original board. I don't know who all, Rocky was, I understood there was other council members, we understood what we were doing. And if we don't have a meeting, I can't see, that'd be like holding the council meeting and we don't have an agenda and have everybody show up and no meeting.
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm not proposing a
Right,
meeting.
well,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to have a notice. If Mr. Green, and I think we all are on board as the CRA and the council person, you know whether we need a meeting or not.
I would take,
I think we need a meeting. I'm gonna go to Mr. Dick here, I'm gonna go to Community Development, or I'm gonna go to somebody and say, hey,
We need to meet.
we need a meeting.
Yeah.
And boom, we'll have a meeting.
each one of us was given a copy of this schedule before the year, and I think I have it circled in red, so I'm aware, when I'm looking at my schedule, or this here, I'm aware that there is going to be a tentative meeting, same as a budget workshop, and the next tentative one is June the 19th at 5:30 if needed.
Guys, ladies and gentlemen, all I'm saying is that those dates are clearly defined. There is no date like the second Wednesday before a council meeting, you have to have your agenda items posted. The Tuesday before a council meeting, you have, the final agenda needs to be posted. Those are in there for very important reasons, because it sets guidelines. I like it. I like hey, just let me know. This is a serious CRA. This is a serious district, and I think that it deserves serious ordinances to support it that mirror the council. I drafted a proposed ordinance today. I appreciate the discussion. If you think that there's stuff in the ordinance that you can't live with, I don't I don't understand why. I think that if we can formalize this process and provide some structure, it'll give some comfort for me, certainly, as an elected representative for this community. So thank you.
Okay, my question to Mr. Morrison is, do you know when there was information that should have required a meeting that we didn't have a meeting? If not, to me, it's pretty simple. Do you know
Is your question, did I know of information?
that would require us to have our CRA meeting? Did you have something that you wanted to add to a CRA meeting that you weren't given the opportunity to? Or you just want to have a meeting with really no reason behind it?
No, not at all. No reason to have a meeting if there's no business. I'll say that again. No reason to have a meeting if
Well, the
there's no
question I'm
business.
asking you, did you have information that
Yes.
would require a meeting
Yes,
be
sir.
held?
Yes, sir, I did. And in fact, a separate issue was Rocky had brought, Councilmember Randall's, had brought some information to me in regards to the CRA as well. That would have been a wonderful thing to discuss in that meeting.
What is that?
Excuse me?
What are you talking about? What information?
It was in regards to just some previous CRA meetings. He had some information that he had dropped off that he wanted her to send my way.
Okay.
And that
Was
was
it-
just
what-
answering Mayor Pro Tem's
Okay.
answer. Another example. Right now, I have some things that I want to meet on the CRA. You're going to have things that you need to meet, and I was looking for a formal process to mirror the ordinances that we can follow, to know that when the clear deadline is. That way we can set some expectations. It's important to know expectations. To know, hey, Wes, you're dropping this on me last minute. I don't know when your deadline is to cancel a meeting. None of these things are formalized.
Frankly, Wes, the information that you did submit did not meet our deadline for the last CRA meeting, so you missed the deadline.
The unknown deadline.
It's not unknown. It's right in our. It's right up there. It's on that sheet. It's all over the place.
Okay, and it's annual resolution. It's every year.
Yes, there's a deadline established to submit information, a meeting request for each of the quarterly meetings.
Okay.
So it's all there. But if you come and talk,
I think
to
it was
us-
I think it was in your orientation packet.
It is. So
Okay,
talk
what
to
about
us, and
that?
we'll help you through the process. That's what we're here for.
I'm
Day-to-day
familiar with the
operation.
process. I would like to put this in the ordinances and formalize the process. That's all I'm asking. This is on a piece of paper that gets changed every year. This can be a timeless addition. If the council doesn't want it, we don't want it. That's okay. I propose some language, and I'd like to even strengthen it. And I think we're putting ourselves in a little bit of risk beyond the personalities in the room for future generations who take these seats over. This isn't a timeless piece, and for those reasons, I'm concerned.
All right, anybody want to add to it, or we just move on? Get consensus to move on? Anybody want to make a motion on this? Go ahead. We're just looking for consensus, that's all. If you could get somebody else to second it, we got consensus. That's what I'm saying, because I want to move on. I think we've discussed this to where it's, I mean, the ink has gone off the page.
I'd like to make a motion for staff to draft an ordinance that this council consider and to vote on prior to the next CRA meeting, if possible.
Hearing none, let's move on. Item number 7. Policy discussion related to the city code ordinances, called to order, the quorum, and roll call. This is item number 6. Mr. Morrison, this is your item.
Yep, this will be quick. I've always liked the fact that our city council meetings have always led with the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, similar to the last issue is, I thought it was a great opportunity to add this into the section of our code to say that a Pledge of Allegiance is a part of the process. Thank you for the staff for drafting some proposed language for that. That, again, future councils who take this over can see that we encourage the Pledge of Allegiance, that We do not forget that this country allows this city to be great, and we've always done it since I started coming to meetings, and Mayor Randalls was at the helm, and now our very own Mayor Hogue continues to do it. Again, it's not in the ordinances, and I think that that's something that we could consider adding. I wanted a discussion tonight to direct Mr. Green to add that proposed amendment. And even further, and I think most importantly, as you can see tonight, we disagree from time to time, but I continue to have the highest level of respect for this council and our mayor and our city manager, city attorney, and all of our staff directors who work very hard on a day-to-day basis. And certainly the citizens and the people who attend here today, our public and our first responders, thank you. And we can get emotional up here, and I think that there is something magical in taking a deep breath and counting to 5 or counting to 10. And before the gavel hits, or after the gavel hits, I would like to propose adding in a moment of silence prior to the Pledge of Allegiance, and then roll call will follow, so that you can, look down at your phone, you can review your notes, you can do whatever your heart leads you to do, and some may pray in that moment. But that moment of silence is something that I wanted to talk with council about to see if we could consider adding in. I don't think we've ever had it, thanks to the research staff did in there, and I think it's, again, another timeless way to set the direction of our city as we're moving forward. So thank you.
You're asking for just a moment of silence, but I thought you had wanted to move the pledge to after roll call.
You could have the order jumbled there. I've got to find it, but yes, it's to add immediately after roll is called, the presiding officer shall call for a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. So yes, roll call followed by a moment of silence, then the pledge.
I disagree with part of it. I'll go along, but I have druthers about a moment of silence because that creates groups of people again, like they took away the right of holding a Christian prayer or somebody coming in. So you don't have that right in the country no more to do that. But the moving the Pledge of Allegiance after you open the meeting, I would not be in favor of that. The Pledge of Allegiance is the leading thing of this country. You cannot go to a sports event that doesn't have the Pledge of Allegiance before anything starts. Motorsports, boxing, wrestling, baseball, football, anything. And I don't know of anybody else that I know of offhand. I didn't really look into it, but I've been to a lot of other council meetings, and that's the first thing they do before roll call.
And I think that order got messed up. That's how I verbally said it, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that we would follow the existing order that you led with today. So sorry for any confusion.
So, but I don't know.
I have something to say about this.
The moment of silence, I don't have a problem with that. I think you can do that even without being told if you want to do it. But it could lead to people coming in here and demanding a moment of silence, but they're going to tell you why. And it's something you might not want to hear. And everybody has that right. They got the right to come in here and take your Christianity away from you, it seems like. So I would rather beg off on it. But, I mean, that's up to the rest of the people. But the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm a very, very profound person on that flag. And that, just the idea of trying to move it's going to muster my feathers. But that's not what I want to say, and I'm going to just pass it on down the line.
Moment of silence. I feel that a moment of silence is appropriate at certain times, such as when we have the Paul shooting or the shooting at the school down in South Florida. Those are terrible things that have happened in our country, and those are important things that we would designate as moments of silence. As far as prayer goes, I've been praying this entire meeting tonight. I am not happy with it. I have to tell you that. I don't like the conflict. And so when some of you are speaking, I'm praying.
Moment of silence is usually, I know a couple times we've had them at our meetings. And it's like Angela says, it's for something that might, one of our officers or firefighters or like the gentleman that got, the commander that got hit in the head, we had a moment of silence that night for him. So we do, but we only do it on an occasion when it's needed. But to open it up to, oh yeah, we're gonna have a moment of silence at our meetings every night, well, then you're gonna start getting these toxic people. You know, they're gonna come in here and wanna tell you something, they're gonna have a moment of silence for it. So I'd rather just kind of let it be the way it is. We do have a moment of silence when it's needed. The Pledge of Allegiance, in my opinion, is the forerunner of anything, and it should never be behind something else. So I just can't support you on this 100%, Wes. But if everybody feels we need a moment of silence, okay, but I think we do enough moment of silences when the time comes. We've done it in the past many times. Officer Brown here, I'm sorry to say.
Mayor,
He's asked for a moment of silence before, when he first got here, so we do. If you want a moment of silence for something, feel free to do it, but I don't think we should do it for a public participation thing in a meeting, because that's what it'll open it up to.
Mayor, did each people get a copy of this, or was I the only one that got it? It really says opening prayer dropped from the county commission meetings after court ruling.
Right.
Well, we were here in 2015 when this hubbub come up, and it did expel or progress, right, exactly like you said, and I can read it just well, it's late. Did you got it? Or am I the only one?
Yes, that was included in the agenda packets.
Okay. But 3 organizations and 5 individuals sued the county over an invocation practice. I know that's religion, but that space could give somebody an opportunity to say, I want my, and I guess I'll read on just a little bit. The end result is that the judge ordered the county to pay the plaintiffs a total of $60,000 in compensatory damages. And they also heeded the advice of the county attorney Scott to halt the invocation practice, at least for the time being. I don't consider perhaps that as an invocation, but I sure don't wish to give somebody an opportunity to say, I would like to have my minute of silence because of this. I don't know if it could happen. I guess I'm saying that, and Wes, I understand where you're going, and I'm not as religious as you are, and I admire you for that. But I guess my desire is to maintain our present call to order, pledge of allegiance, and the roll call on the quorum. And that's kind of simple. We've done that, and we've escaped all the criticism that some cities have had, fortunately. And it's simply the things on the top of the thing, call to order, pledge, and then the roll call. I could live with that and defend that.
The thought was just to be clear, and I did, thank you for gathering that. The invocation at the county level, we all know an invocation is very different than a moment of silence. An invocation, you know, the way the county worked is they rotated in every single meeting. You would ask someone to do a public invocation. I can certainly understand where those concerns of unpredictable, spontaneous things could happen. And you might even lose order of the meeting. And as a chair, as the mayor, I can understand where that come from. Today, since that's happened, the county has, to your point, no longer continued that, but they do maintain a moment of silence. So I thought about that prior. And as far as the order goes, the thought, I am a Christian, and but I also respect that you have the freedom to choose in this country, and freedom of religion. So that's why a moment of silence, again, was timely and allowed you to spend that time however you see fit. Being that I am a Christian, I would advocate that it would come up before the Pledge of Allegiance. I personally put God above country, and I think that people can have that moment. And that was my logic on that. Where it goes, Councilmember Raymond, I certainly appreciate your prayers. Just know that that's noted, and all of you. But I really want to just thank you all for discussing this with me. I'm happy to know. And the last point I want to make is, I understand we do these types of moment of silence during tragedies and fallen officers and the horrifying things that happen day to day in the events. But the policy decisions that we make here are very serious, and I'm not comparing them to the tragedies. That when we make a simple change from a 20-foot down to an 8-foot or a 20-foot minimum up to a 28-foot, you say, well, that's economic. It changes things, and it's not life or death situations, but it is an important big decision financially, and I think we all take it seriously. For me, and I think this council, I just wanted an opportunity to know that, all right, we're about to go into to represent the people, and that moment of a silence allowed a little peace to what can sometimes be called a storm, and hopefully not too painful for you. So, thank you. If everyone's spoken, I don't think I have a second, but in courageous faith, I would like to make a motion.
Before you make your motion, I'll make a statement.
Sure.
If you want to have a moment of silence, have a moment of silence. Okay? I don't have a problem with moments. I'm a Christian just like you.
I agree.
I'm so deeply involved in my church, probably more so than here. But,
Me also, yeah.
I don't think we need a motion. I think everybody agrees with you, but everybody don't agree to the point of where we would have public intercede. And that's what you would do, would be opening the door by putting that moment of silence on your agenda. So I have no problem.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish. And I'm sure the rest of the council probably feels, I have no problem. If you want to have a moment of silence, you ask for it. And if somebody else wants you, let them ask for it, because they may have an issue that they want to bring up a moment of silence for it. But I don't want to put it on an agenda and have it be, now you're making it public. Have that, somebody come up here and ask you to have a moment of silence, and you don't know what it's going to be for until you hear it. And you can't refuse to let them do it. So we're playing it safer by not having it on your agenda. But I'm all for, if you want to have it, just ask for it and we'll do it. I don't have a problem with that. Anybody else on this board wants to do it?
I just have one comment. Our founding fathers separated church and state, and there was a good reason for it. But it was.
Well, I think I'm getting.
But there is a good reason.
We're getting into it. We're getting into
Yeah, and I agree with you, Councilmember Raymond.
Let's just draw a line on this.
Yeah.
Wes, if you want to have a moment of silence, you ask for it before we call the roll, and we'll do it. I don't have a problem with it. I can't stop you. Nobody can stop. You can't stop anybody from asking for something. So.
Yeah,
But to put it on an agenda as one of our items, then you're putting it out there where you might regret having it there.
Maybe you have wisdom in this that I don't. I didn't foresee anything happening other than a moment of silence, but and very different than an invocation.
Well, you're putting it on an agenda as an item to have a moment of silence, and that doesn't preclude anybody to walk in here and want a moment of silence and ask for it.
No, I don't think that's how it works, but
Well, it is. If you put it out there on the public agenda, I'm sorry to tell you that that's how it works.
Okay.
Anything's on the agenda, the people, everybody in this audience has a right to speak on anything that's on this agenda. You can't stop it. So you don't have it on your agenda, but you have your moment of silence. Anybody that has a issue, that has something in their life, or I got a brother that's probably going to pass a cancer in a week. I may ask for a moment of silence when he passes. So it's just, it's your doings. When you want to do it, have it. There's nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's against it, but it just puts it out there on the agenda and it's public. They can do it. And it makes it kind of tough. So we'll move on. We're on our last item.
Reports.
I'm sorry?
It's reports.
Is it all over with?
Yeah. Yeah, reports.
You got anything to report?
I have nothing, sir.
Good. I don't have anything either.
Mayor criticizes me.
Angela?
For being too talkative. I've been quiet tonight.
I'll
Excuse
just say a few things. March 24th and April 14th, I led the Mayor's Fitness Walk at Manatee Park. I was not expected to do that, but I did it. And on April 9th, I went to the Board of Directors meeting with the Space Coast Florida League of Cities, and that was a very productive meeting, and we also had the dinner. And at the board meeting, there was something that I thought was very interesting. The board had decided that they were going to do the candidate forum for all elected officials. And they were going to take it away from the League of Women Voters. And I objected to that at the Malabar meeting. And I was very happy that they decided to give the candidate forums back to the League of Women Voters, since they are experienced and professional at doing those. So I was very happy about that. In addition, we found out that the general at Patrick Air Force Base will be retiring in August, and we will have a new general coming in. And at that point, some of us will be invited to some of the retirement functions down at the Air Force Base. We also found out when all the launches were. And in addition, at that last meeting, the 10th annual Mayor's Breakfast, and the public is invited to this, the Mayor's Breakfast, is going to be May 10th at the Crown Plaza, Melbourne Oceanfront. That's important. And anyway, we do need to be aware about that transition. We also heard Dr. DeFries speak about the lagoon and the Indian River Lagoon and what's being done by the council, that he's in charge of the council and National Estuary Program. And we did get the annual report about one lagoon. If anybody would like to look, you are welcome to look at this. I also have to tell you that I went to do grandparent duty in Winter Garden. At that time, I decided that I wanted to visit their fairly new city hall, built, I think, about 2008. And it's very similar to ours. The council room is exactly like ours. I did get a tour because I happened to meet the community engagement director there. I was very interested in the use of space for the offices, and I was very interested in the number of employees and staff that they had there for their city of about 50,000. They feel that it will cap about 70. I just thought it's interesting sometime to look into things like this. And I had about an hour's tour from the community engagement department. I also was inspired by my grandson Tosh, who is 8 years old. And he came home and I asked him what he was doing in school that day, and he said, we're writing haikus. And as you know, I'm interested in a poet laureate for the city. So of course I've written about 25 haikus, and I want to recite my favorite now. If you all don't know what a haiku is, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Cape Canaveral, my neighborhood on the move, in the space between. Thank you.
Wow. I had to think about that. Wow.
You have a report?
Yeah, I do, just real quick. Looking at the hands on the clock, just to maybe give a comment to city manager's administrative assistant, one of us mentioned, probably me, that I couldn't see the hands on the clock. If you look, there's new hands on that clock. So just from an off-calls situation, it took a change. New book come out. It's out on the thing. Brevard believes it tells about this annual report. But if you look in there, I guess Josh and the city manager have put, for our sponsorship with the county, we work very close with the county on there. And it's the space between, and it shows the mayor with his trophy for everything. But it's good when we partner with big brothers, I hate to say that, but when we partner with somebody that works together with us. And No other city did it, to my knowledge. Let me pass on a couple of three important things I think was important. Of the several committees, probably the most 5 important I have the privilege of serving on is the TPO, that's the Transportation Planning. And as many of you maybe have heard me speak about elections and campaigns for about the last 30 years, A1A has been one of my big goals. We received at this past Thursday's agreement $2,600,000 for an in-house design of A1A from Long Point going north. It's been working. It's through the staff here, through the TPO, through the Florida State, but that's quite a bit of money, bearing in mind that is only for the design and PD&E, planning, design, and engineering. So A1A is going to get a change. I think that's a good thing. Also, we were granted the privilege of being part of the NASA Causeway exception. That's the bridge out there. We have been working on that. A lot of people have been working on it. That's the bridge that goes to NASA Causeway from 405, and that's going to be done. I have the original copy in color of the Port Canaveral Strategic Vision Plan. Jeff, did you get it? Did you attend it out there at the meeting? Who attended? Okay. In any event, I'll share it with you. It's all in color. It tells what the port's going to do. Very vivid, quite good pictures. I'll give it to staff to make a copy of it, and that's all. Please.
Yes, thank you. Quick update. Hats off to community engagement team who I think we're live streaming tonight. Is that?
All 9 people are watching.
Sweet. 9 more people. So I know that a lot of hard work went in that, and thanks to our city manager for leading and making all that happen. I really feel like that's going to allow people to understand what's going on, especially those with mobility issues who can't get to these meetings and or have to work late. 6 o'clock can be sometimes an awkward time for people depending on their schedule. So huge win there. Thank you all very much. Working with Dave on conceptual R2 height limit raises and trying to figure out what the best approach is for that, very early stage. Compliments again to our staff. It's like you ask and you shall receive. There was some trash cans that were dirty by the beach, and I just asked a question and voila, it was done quickly. So thank you very much for making that happen. So if you've got questions, they're on it, and we appreciate that. Trash Bash was a big hit this year. I had a chance to meet with the executive director of Keep of Our Beautiful, Tony Sasso. He's got a lot of pride in what's happening in Cocoa Beach down there, and I said, watch out, Cape Canaveral likes to be the best at whatever we do. So we're going to continue our efforts there, and we were talking about some ideas on how to keep Cape Canaveral clean. Not that we're doing a bad job there. I think we're doing a great job. But we can always improve. And last is we had our Envision Cape Canaveral meeting. That was our first one, and it was a really cool experience for me to be with council and the staff to talk about where we're headed and some really neat ideas for the future. So Banana River Lagoon is a hot issue right now, and we're working hard. We're waiting to learn more, and I just want to thank everyone for attending tonight, so thank you.
Okay, I was going to be long-winded, but the previous 3 took all my time. So I would just like to say that staffing, I'd like to thank the staff for the excellent job they did in hosting the League of Cities dinner. A thankless job, but you did an excellent job. I want to everybody that had a part in it, I just want to personally thank you. And that's it. What's that? When is it? Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, I don't have too much to report, other than the fact that everything that they said, I probably was going to mention 1 or 2 of them. But anyway, we got a luncheon scheduled with the school. Mayor Pro Tem and me, we're going to do a luncheon with the children there at the Cape View Media Center and do some recognition of people in the community in Brevard County. And then there will be a time after that, I guess. And Thursday, I believe, is Arbor Day in the city. We're going to be planting some trees, so I'll be there for that. And got a pretty busy schedule. But I can go on with 3 more or 4 more, but I'm through. We had a good meeting tonight, and thank everybody for coming. Thank staff, thank the fire service, and the guys in green. Be safe.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned. I'll give you an email. See if I can do, you know.